Here's a question for you. Is Andor the new standard for Star Wars? Should it be? The television series Andor is somewhat of a diversion from the standard Star Wars story format. While it takes place in the universe where space wizards and laser swords are common, where the grand and epic struggles of huge tableaus between light and dark, good and evil are expected, Andor is much more removed from the grand saga. It's a story about people. It's a story about the struggle of the common citizen. It's a story about the uncomfortable, the painful, and somewhat dark birth of the rebellion against the Galactic Empire, or at least one individual's entry into that rebellion. For lack of a better description, Andor is a political spy story. Andor tells the story of Cassian Andor, introduced to us in the movie Rogue One, and gives us the origins of his entry into the Rebel Alliance. The story opens on the planet of Morlana 1, with Cassian looking for any information on his sister that he was separated from at a very young age.
What are you? Seriously? Boyfriend, husband?
I'm looking for my sister.
Well, whoever she is, she's not here.
And his unfortunate encounter with corrupt authority figures.
There you go. I got 300 credits in my coat pocket.
Wow. What are the chances on that? That is almost exactly what it costs to cover the fine. It's so in charge of our personal processing fee.
This ends in the eventual murder of 2 security officers and establishes Cassian Andor as a hunted man. Later in the series, we learn of Cassian's origins and his connection with his sister in a flashback portion in a later episode. Unfortunately, the sister story arc gets lost in the storytelling of the rest of Cassian's story and leaves the audience asking, well, what happened to his sister? The story continues to show Cassian's struggles from that point on, showing his involvement with the theft of an Imperial Skypath unit, his failed attempt to sell the unit to Luthen Rael, his forced escape and self-exile from his adopted home planet of Ferrix, his recruitment by Luthen Rael into the fledgling rebellion, and his involvement with the rather notable heist of Imperial credits on the planet of Aldhani, his eventual capture by the Empire, and escape from the prison on Narkina 5, to his secretive return to Ferrix to the funeral of his adopted mother, and to the unfortunate riot against Imperial occupying forces. While the focus is on Cassian, we're introduced to a group of characters that are just as important to the story as Cassian and help flesh out the story. Cyril Karn, the Deputy Inspector of the Prelox Morlana Authority. He's the one that started the investigation of the murders that Cassian commits in Episode 1. Luthen Rael, he's the buyer that Cassian meets, and we learn a great deal about him and his involvement with the fledgling rebellion. Deidre Miro is the ambitious ISB director that eventually establishes the manhunt for Cassian due to the fact of suspected rebel activity on Ferrix. Mon Mothma, the senator from Chandrilla, who was introduced to us in Episode 6, Return of the Jedi.
Many Bothans died to bring us this information.
We get to see the beginnings of her involvement in the rebellion. And of course, the list goes on. The entire story is well written, and the acting is some of the best we've ever seen in the Star Wars franchise. That's my personal opinion. Though, with all that, it naturally has its critics. As with every story in the Star Wars franchise, there are passionate detractors from anything new in the Star Wars universe. Most of the criticisms that are voiced is that Andor doesn't follow the familiar plots or plot patterns of the Star Wars franchise. There isn't any Jedi or Sith prominently focused on. No one has a lightsaber. There aren't enough aliens shown. It doesn't focus on any of the Skywalkers. The story is too slow and people got bored. Too much talking and not enough action. For me, that's exactly what sets Andor apart and made it important to me. It wasn't focused on the Skywalkers. It didn't involve huge monolithic battles between good versus evil, or it didn't rely on any of the tried and true story formats or blatant product placement of the original trilogies and subsequent trilogies that followed. The story was more intimate, more personal, and in being so, the stakes of failure were higher because you invested in the characters. The possibility of failure was higher. The fact that the story was a television series made the character development much more easier and much more important. The audience had the chance to actually be able to invest emotionally into the characters that appealed to them and thereby invest in those characters' successes and failures. It became more real, more visceral. It was a dark, gritty, ugly, uncomfortable, and in being so, it made the moments of victory and hope even more bright. It was a grown-up Star Wars story for a grown-up Star Wars audience. In my opinion, that's what I want to see more in Star Wars. But should this be the way that all Star Wars stories are told from now on? Of course not. While Andor appealed to me in a big way, I'm only one of many who liked it. I honestly don't think that there should be any one way to tell a Star Wars story. With all the movies, TV shows, comic books, novels, cartoons, fan fictions, there's something out there for everyone. Star Wars is a big menu, and you don't have to eat everything on the menu, and you don't have to like everything on the menu. Find what you like, find what appeals to you, and go from there. What do you think? Is this the new Star Wars? Should the producers abandon this type of storytelling altogether and stick to the original space saga? Leave your comment and tell me your opinion. Well, that's all I have for this episode. If you enjoyed this, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Let the algorithm know that this is something that you like, and that way the algorithm will know that this is how this channel should grow. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the Outer Rim.